Look at God. Like, amen.
Ray, here we go. Here we go. Okay,
Can
we're
we get
here.
this? Welcome, everybody. We are now back on, and hopefully it won't hang up. I'm contemplating, like, should we start all over? Should we just dig on where we were? Okay,
Okay.
I think we'll dig in where we were. Okay,
Okay.
so we already covered the reason for the title. We already introduced each other. If you guys are just tuning in because you weren't with before, I am Monika J. We are doing a virtual launch of his book, Panorama, and that is Ross Victory. So the last question before we were able to be disconnected, we were talking about how the quarantine has been for you.
Yeah. So quarantine has been, it started off super isolating, right? So it's just kind of like, I don't know, a state of panic. I mean, I went to the grocery store like everybody else trying to get toilet paper and damn canned goods, and like everything was gone. I even went to a white one in Pacific Palisades. I was like, let me go ahead and go to the Vons in Pacific Palisades to see, and there was just no food. So that was really, it was really scary because, you know, when you think of pandemic, for some reason, I think of like shit growing on my arms and like on my face. Like you didn't know what it was gonna be, but then it just got boring, you know. And then it just, because I'm also unemployed, so I didn't really have a job to go to. But after a few weeks of it, I was like, you know what, why don't I take this time just to really create? And so as you know, I'm a singer too, songwriter, so I was like, let me just write songs. And I think I've written and recorded like 10 songs already. Yeah. And so, you know, trying to remain creative and inspired has been a challenge, but I think I have a hold on it now. And I did, you know, some nature walks and stuff around my area, tried to get outside because my apartment's small, you know, staying in here can be really isolating, but it's definitely been interesting. You know, it just put a lot of pressure on my mental health.
That has been a total key this whole time. Like, I think we had discussed it right of the cusp of it. I believe you were in the studio, Hotwordz Lyrical Theater,
Yeah.
right before it started. I believe that it was like the 30th of March, maybe somewhere around there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we were talking about the mental health and things of that sort,
Yeah.
and about that with the whole George Floyd and things of that sort. My next question to you is, how does it feel to be a Black man in America right now?
Yeah. That is, I mean, that is the question, you know, what does all this mean for Blackness in America? And, you know, when that video first came out, I didn't watch it right away. Like I saw the man's knee on George Floyd's neck, and I didn't even want to engage it because I felt like it was negative. And I'm just being honest. Like I just felt like it was negative. It was dark energy. But I was like, you know, it's 2020. I gotta see what's going on. Like, what the fuck is going on? So when I watched the video, I was like, this man just killed somebody on television, and what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? And then, you know, when you engage on social media, you see people saying, I'm afraid to go outside. It's like, do I feel afraid to go outside? And then other people would be like, why does everyone hate us? Do I feel hated? So it made me look at my relationship with my own Blackness, if that makes sense. And then how do I use it? How do I keep this moment? How do I respect and honor this moment to the collective energy and where America is? But then how do I not lose sight of all the progress I've made with my racial identity, you know? And since it's Father's Day, someone who I would call would be my dad. Be like, hey, Dad, let's talk about this. He's, you know, my Black father. What does this mean for you and for me? And I think that he would probably say, just be aware of it. Be mindful that there's people out here who hate your very existence, just the thought of it. But also don't let that limit your spirit and maybe your ideas for your life, I think.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's very challenging. I think for in a whole, it is very difficult. Just being Black right now. But I think that it's even more of a strain being a Black guy. You know what I mean? I never know what those shoes feel like, you know?
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to you guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like the whole racial profiling and just all that is just, you guys have a a lot to carry, you know what I mean? Like just walking out the house every day. So it's just like my hat goes off to you, like, you know what I mean?
See, and that's what I mean. Like even walking out the house is like, do I even want to feel like, is that even something that I need to be aware of? It's like, yeah, you should be aware of it, but I guess don't let it limit me. And then I noticed too, when I turn off the Instagram or turn off the TV and I just focus on my immediate environment, my, you know, family, my neighbors and stuff, everything feels fine. So it's like, what's going on? You turn on the TV and the world is in chaos and everybody hates you. But then when you shut it off, it's like, what? You know?
Right. And that's so interesting that you said that, because every now and again I would do that, and even more so now during this time that we're quarantined, I had to find myself to not look at the news because they give you what they want you to see. You know what I mean? So you get so saturated with all the negativity going on, but in the reality in your world and your, you know, your little circle, it's normal, it's fine. But it's just so much of the saturation of just everything going on. Now don't get me wrong, it is very good for you to be aware of what is going on, but not to the point where you're at home depressed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To make sure that your mental is in check, you know? So
and that's hard.
What is good for you? If that means turning off the TV and not looking at news so much, or if that means not being so involved in social media, or, you know, on a regular basis. I think that in all of this, what I've learned is mental health is just as important as your regular health. Like, you go to the doctor and get a checkup at least once a year. So it's just like, why are we not realizing how important mental health is as well? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and especially to be under quarantine and have to like face racial hatred, like that's some deep, dark stuff. And I mean, a lot of true colors are coming out too right now. I feel like there's some closet ass racists. Like, you really feel like that? Like, you really feel? Yeah. So I don't know. It's definitely been.
They were closeted. I think that they were more so didn't have the full platform to be able to expose how they truly felt. I think like the people that were closeted racist, I feel like they were racist in your face, just slight. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's like throwing shade, but it's kind of like a cool way to throw shade. Yeah. It's like that. And I think that now, you know, I hate to say it, but now that Trump's in office, I just feel like, who gives a fuck? You know what I mean?
Anything goes. You're right.
To hide anymore. Like, why do I have to be polite about my racism? I'm gonna just put it in your face. You know what I mean? But back to our interview though.
Yeah, so but that's real. That's real.
Because we can talk about that all day, honey. Okay.
I know.
The first interview that we had together was at Hotwordz Lyrical Theater, and it was for the views of from the cockpit. Yeah. Now, Views from the Cockpit was a super intimate and emotional reflection of you and your father. Now we have Panorama.
Yeah.
And how did this book and song come about within this past year?
Yeah, so Views from the Cockpit was the reconciliation of my dad's impact on my life, right? And so part of that work required me to look just at everything, you know, how I felt about him, how certain events went down, and what I wanted to do with that. I think that's the biggest thing. Now that you've looked at it, what does that mean? As I was writing Views from the Cockpit, and I was kind of writing about my dad's third wife. So his third wife was a lady from China. He was in his 70s, she's 37. you know, it didn't end well. It ended in a state of elder abuse and fraud and all kinds of craziness, right? While I was writing that, there was a minute before it even published, I was like, whoa, what does my relationship situation look like? You know, and how am I navigating who's good in my life and who's bad in my life? And am I really focused on, so to me, the test of a relationship is, are you going to be there when it matters most? That's your value. So when the shit hits the fan, when I am bedridden, I can't move, I'm shitting on myself, pissing on myself, do you have the mental capacity or the character to be there when it matters most? And so I asked myself that question while I was writing. I was like, damn, what is my relationship with that? What does my relationships look like? Who's been in and out? How do I even reconcile that? And when I got to that place in the book, I was like, this is a whole separate book, because there was some pain that I hadn't healed from in South Korea. So I lived in South Korea for a period of time. Almost 10 years ago, I was in South Korea, and there was some situations that happened that I hadn't healed from. But I said, you know what? That's a whole separate book. Let me write Views from the Cockpit. This is a father-son relationship. Let me get this out. And then if Panorama wants to come to life, then we let Panorama come to life. And so after Views from the Cockpit came, you know, I'm an author doing my interviews, seeing what it's like to publish a book. I was like, let me take a stab at Panorama. And so Panorama picks up from South Korea. I'm there and I meet a soldier from Brazil. And so that's kind of what the book talks about. But it also talks about why in the past, some of my relationships have maybe suffered and the dynamics of that suffering. And I think, and the book speaks a lot to bisexual men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly before we go to the next question, I wanted to thank you for the first book. I feel like first and foremost, as Black people, we are so used to, and I think I had discussed that when we were talking about the first book. We're so used to sweeping everything under the rug.
Right.
Your book made me look at my own self and look at my own relationships and my upbringing, and seeing how certain situations, instead of it being dealt with, it was just swept under the rug, and a little pat on your shoulder like, you'll be okay, move on. And then that trickles down, or down to you as an adult in the way that you deal with relationships coming in and out of your life. And then you don't realize then, when you sit back, to see a lot of people that are around you only to benefit from themselves.
Right.
Not because, like you were saying, that they're down for, you when you shitting on yourself and you not, able to do anything for them.
Right.
But to take from you. So
right.
It just makes you sit back and be like, wow. You know what I mean? And
right.
I don't know if that is a generational thing, where it's like we only are around people when we can benefit from them. And once you no longer need them, you no longer need them around. You know what I mean? And it's like a me kind of, it's all about me.
Right.
And it's really sad, like, if that's really, just if you think of that concept, it's really sad. We used to be a people, and even if it's just not, a whole race thing, but we used to be a people that took care of each other. If you didn't have something, let me come by and bring you some milk. You don't have no milk? You don't have no bread for your kids? Let me come and help you.
Yeah.
But now it's like, well, what can I get from you? Like, what do you have for me? Like, you know what I mean? And it's just
community has been destroyed. Community.
Absolutely. And it's so sad. And I'm hoping that with all the protests and everything, as people are starting to join together, and hopefully that will bring that unity back, what we used to have, where we're looking out for our brother, we're looking out for our sister, and making sure that our community is okay. You know what I mean?
Is it gonna take someone to be murdered on camera in a global pandemic for everybody to wake up and say, you know what, the humanity between everybody is the most important thing. Like, what will it take? Because I think at this moment in history, this has to be that moment. I think, at least for, millennial generation, like, this has to be that moment where everyone transcends their storylines, all the stuff that's been swept up. This is that moment. And I don't know, a lot of people are in the conversation now, a lot of white people, and there's a lot of white on white conversations that are going on, which I think are the most important ones, right? Because we know that racism exists, like, to prove that is beside the issue. But what will it take for us to use this moment to say, you know what, community is what we should be doing? I don't know, but I see a lot of buy black businesses. Is that short-lived? Are people really gonna do that?
And that's what I don't know either. And LGD Poet has a good point. She says sometimes we need to deep root ourselves and heal to grow. I agree with you on that.
And that's hard to do. And I feel like you have to get to a certain age, because I was talking to my mom and she was like, after all you've been through, like, what do you care about now? It's like, there's just so much, you're healing from all this trauma and you just don't, I care about stuff, but you have to really, like she said, de-root yourself to heal and grow. You have to let it all go in its time, and then you come back stronger. It's crazy.
Because we just, like I said, we have all this luggage that we carry since we were little, and we don't take the time to unpack it. We don't take the time. And we as people, we always, as colored people, we think it's stupid or laughable to go to therapy. Like, in a general, we don't. We there's been plenty of times where they're like, oh, baby, just pray over it. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And sometimes that's not the answer. Now, I'm not saying that you can't pray over it and heal so that you get healing, but sometimes we do need to go to therapy and have somebody talk and sort it out. Sort your emotions out and sort your feelings out. Sort it out for you so it can make sense.
And full transparency, when quarantine hit, this is full transparency, I was like, you know what? I know myself. Yes, I'm creative. I have a creative outlet. Let me go ahead, especially when that stimulus check kicked in, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and use my stimulus check and go ahead and use this in some sessions. I sure did. I took my black ass right to my therapist, and we have been meeting not only to cope with the pressure of isolation and quarantine, but now to cope with this whole, what does it mean to be a black man? Like, what is happening? What's that tense on your spirit? So you're absolutely right. And I reject the notion that healing can't take place in a therapeutic environment. I really do. I reject that. And I think we owe ourselves that.
Sorry. Because I had a question. It was there and then it went away. And I was going to ask you. Okay, so LGD Poet asks you, do you feel healed or still in the process to enlightenment?
Oh my God, there's some days, like when Views from the Cockpit came out, there were some days I woke up laughing, like happy for no reason. That weight lifted off my shoulder. So I think every day that I practice and I assert my freedom, oh my gosh, it feels, like you're just very clear on who you are, and what you came to do. You know what I'm saying? And once you get a little taste of that feeling, and I think Views from the Cockpit was a taste of that feeling, it's just like, I want more, I want more, I want more. It's like, and people are being helped from it. So Views from the Cockpit, people are hitting me up, hey, abuse is going down. I'm so glad I'm not alone. Men reaching out, hey, I think it's time for me to see a therapist. Thank you for sharing your story. You see, so when you take that leap of faith and that vulnerability, and then the universe gives you that validation that you're not alone, come on.
Right? So Panorama shows readers 3 different types of bisexual people.
Yeah.
Don't see that in many stories where writers label characters as bisexual or characters refer to themselves as bisexual. Why is that?
you know, my goal in Panorama, by showcasing 3 bisexual characters, was to show the range of that experience, and to really give a label to that experience so that the reader's not confused. I think a lot of times, like on TV and stuff, you see people doing stuff and there's a cloud of suspicion, right? It's like, okay, you know, what's going on there? And I think, just to be clear, it was important for me to label them, so when they were behaving in certain ways, it was clear for the reader to know this is a bisexual character who's behaving like that. And also, not just the bisexual part, we explore biracial and bisexual, bipolar, biracial, bisexual. See, so I wrote it. So it's like, how do you give light to all of these experiences that exist, but it seems like we erase that experience for some reason. Like biracial people, a lot of them, you get identified as whatever you look like, right? And you erase your whole, like, 10 family members or your 10 family history. So it was important for me, just as a starting point. Of course people are dynamic, right, in their experiences, but as a starting point, this is a bisexual character, and then everything else after that comes after that. And you know, and I think even right now, it's important for people to be seen and heard, right? Black Lives Matter. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be acknowledged for my existence. For some reason, these shows are reluctant to do that. So this is how I kind of clap back and say, you know what? I can't depend on you. So I'm going to write my own fucking story, and I'm going to call the characters what I'm calling them. I don't know if you watch How to Get Away with Murder with Elise Keating. So to me, right. So this is an example. It's like there's someone who's having clear bisexual behavior, yet there's no reference, even as a starting point, to that. And for some reason, I think when you label characters like that, or any type of ambiguous label, it starts making people feel, I think, uncomfortable or maybe isolated. I don't know, but it was important.
Uncomfortable.
Well, not uncomfortable. It's just like, what does your bisexuality or this character's bisexuality mean for me? You know what I'm saying?
But I think that I do want to say uncomfortable, because I feel like I said, as Black people, we're raised in the church, right?
Yeah.
And that makes things very complicated when it comes to your sexual, how you want to live sexually.
Yeah.
It's very closed-minded. And now, at the end of the day, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with religion. There's nothing wrong with church if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like it makes it very difficult as a Black woman, as a Black man, to either be a lesbian, gay, bisexual, whatever it is that one wants to choose to do, because now you're looked down upon because it makes it uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think, and I think when you show those stories on TV, it's important to give context to what that is. And a lot of people who've read the book, it was important for me to put in the book that this doesn't always have to do with actual sex. I feel like this starts in your as a virginal teenager. Your mindset is just, it's a little bit different. I think it has to be nurtured and healed and expansive. Like, why can't these experiences be expansive? And I think as a writer, back to your original question, it's like, as a writer, it's like, okay, this person got their bias, this person got that bias. How do I feel? And what power do I have to assert my truth? And I think that's the way to shut it down, because nobody can invalidate my story and my experiences.
At all. And I agree. Discovery Awake, they said facts. Sex is in general is a taboo. And I agree. Like, you really can't talk about sex. Like, you really can't. Like,
right.
You know, like in general, in your homes, like, it was like, what was that? You know? I mean, The only time that I personally learned about it was when I was sex education in school. That's about it, in a nutshell. and I was not allowed to see anything on TV in regards to sex or anything like that. So, you know, by the time it was time for that,
yeah,
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, you know what I mean? But it is super taboo, and I don't understand why. Like, I feel like those should be conversations so that, you know, you can be knowledgeable on things when you're going into the world. You want to be, you know, have awareness, you know.
right.
So many diseases going around. Like, you want to be, you know, careful, you know.
Absolutely. And I think what Panorama also does is, if I would have read that book, so if I would have read the book that I wrote when I was like 12 or 13 years old, and been like, okay, this is what's going on. Wow, like these characters in this book, wow, like that's what I'm experiencing. If I would have had that book, I think a lot of the trials, tribulations, the hurt, the trauma with relationships would have gone a little different. Did you watch Love is Blind?
Not sure. I don't think so.
So Love is Blind is that dating show where they date in pods or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, of course, they put one Black bisexual man for effect on that show. And, you know, he told his fiance after the fact, like they had already, I know. You're looking
just like, really?
Yeah. You're like,
conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, that's an integrity issue, but do you know what's crazy is, if we don't create safe spaces, and I know this is going to be some kumbaya shit, but if we don't create safe spaces or the language, because you asked, why do you label this character for that? If you don't create the safe spaces and the language, I think then people are just, they're not living with integrity. You're collateral damage, you're being hurt. His wife, his fiance ended up, I mean, yeah, both of them ended up hurt in that relationship. So it's like, how do we just create those safe spaces and the language and just give people space to be imperfect and complicated? And, you know, and these characters in this book are complicated as hell, you know, like.
You done unpacked a lot.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're in therapy, I'm sorry, I'm reading a comment, but I'm in South Korea because of my family dysfunction. The other two characters are in South Korea. Everybody's running away from something. You're trying to escape. And I'm trying to figure out how much of that bisexual identity is about the visibility part because of the use of language.
So you had stated a little while ago that if you had read your own book before, when you were younger, Panorama, that your view would be different. But what my question is to you is, do you feel like you would have been more comfortable in being maybe more comfortable and more in, you know, comfortable in being you?
Yeah, because I think in the
how do you feel like you would be different if you had the book before it was written?
I think it just would have been like accelerated healing and understanding. I think it's like, you know, like, hey, there's people like me who are out here in the world, and this is a real life person that I can grab onto. You know, it's just not something that you're feeling. Okay, I'm not like this group over here. And let's just keep it real. I'm not like the flamboyant gay guys over here. Okay, I'm not like the straight basketball players over here. Where do I fit in? And so if I would have read a story by, hey, there's this confident, you know, talented man, and this is the book, you would be like, damn, so that's possible. So I feel like all of that dating, when should I tell you? And see, that's trauma in and of itself. For people who want to be integrity, it's like, okay, we go out on a date. At which point do I want to tell you that, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, this is what's going on mentally, aside from sex, I think. And so that would have helped accelerate just that healing and how I navigate through the world, you know?
Yeah. So I had seen a comment as you were talking. I forget who asked it, but I believe they were asking if it was a novel or if it was poetry. So maybe now, while we're in the middle of the interview, if you can maybe tell them what it is and then where to maybe purchase it.
Yeah. So Panorama is a mini memoir. So I called it the missing chapter from Views from the Cockpit. So it's a mini memoir, but it has like 8 chapters. And at the end of the 8 chapters, there's an essay. And the essay is an identity politics essay. So it's pretty much why I think that these people who are depicted in the story are having, or why I had so much trouble taking ownership to the bisexuality part. And some of it sounds like a conspiracy, like, oh, straight and gay people are conspiring to suppress bisexual voice. So, you know, I look at all of that and how it manifests in the real world. So it's a mini memoir, and then at the end of it, it's an essay.
Okay, and you can purchase it.
And you can purchase it Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. Just Google it. On my website, rossvictory.com. Yeah.
Okay, so it says accelerated healing and understanding, and then it states that's the way.
That's why, yeah, representation is so important.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for someone who wants to tell their story but is lacking courage? Because I think we're all guilty of that.
And I mean, that is the question, right?
Yeah.
How do you tell your story and have the courage? And I feel like when I look at my life, and I hate to say it was my dad's death that accelerated me and put me on a path to take a look at my full being. That the death did it for me. And 3 years before he died, my brother died. So their collective thing, like back to back, like, oh shit, what's Ross, what you out here doing? And so it took loss to beat me down into a place to where I had to invest in myself and say the only way to make it through this is literally to invest in yourself and tell your own story. And it's hard to find the courage, but also remember that you're not alone. Like if the world is abundant, right? 8 billion people. You said there's not one person who you can identify with who has the same ideas and life path as you. And so you have to reject that. You have to understand the world is abundant and you're not alone. And for me, by telling my story, not only did I access personal freedom, but I realized that I also was not alone. And so that was that validation, right? Like, hey, you're not crazy. This is the same shit I've been feeling for 20 years too, dude.
I think that we're just so afraid. Like, neighbor probably feel the same way, but they're so afraid of being judged. They're so afraid of how you're going to then look at them, you know what I mean? And how you're going to interact with them, that they're so afraid of their truth instead of just living in their truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is back to the Black Lives Matter part. And this is just, I mean, it may be an outrageous opinion, but I think the true white supremacy, like when you think of supremacy and how to dominate, it's stripping the Black people from accessing their heart, right? So like you can't even get to a place to where you can value your own voice and your own, you know what I mean? Like you can't even assert it because you're too busy trying to dodge racial prejudice. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I think sometimes too. Is it a luxury to be able to speak to a counselor? Is it a luxury item to be able to write a book, publish a book? These are all kind of luxuries, right? So how do we get to that person who doesn't have access to that and inspire them to take ownership of their story? I mean, and I feel like that's kind of my mission, is either with my presence or my books, is just to remind people, whatever you're going through, you're not alone, and the power is in your story. Just to tell it.
Because your truth is your truth. And whether you want to be open about it, it's not going to change.
It's not going to change. And you may be, and then if it doesn't, then you are the one who's going to be responsible for that pain. And so once that clicks, like, oh shit, I have to invest in my own self-worth and my own life path. Once that click, I think everything else you don't really care about, because what people are going to say, they're going to say. What people are going to judge, they're going to judge. But at least I have the courage to tell my story. And I think when people tell their story and no one else is, hey, you can't say shit about me, because I'm out here being vulnerable. I'm out here being the change that I want to be. And I just also want to say too, I think it's difficult for Black men to access that, out of all the groups, right? Because we're also working with this masculinity complex, and it's very hard to access, I think, that vulnerability, especially emotional vulnerability, when you have cops out to get you, you have all these forces. It's like, how do you even get to that place? And so, yeah, I just want to be the change. I just want to be the change that I seek, I have to be the change that I seek.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel like, I know earlier in the conversation we were talking about turning off the TV for our mental, health, and being able to turn off the social media. And I feel like in us, being comfortable in who we are, sometimes we should probably mute and turn off the comments, and not in a physical thing where you have to turn off the comments, but I'm just saying, like, once we get past people's opinions of how you live your life, or the opinions of what you're doing, then I feel like that's where you'll be comfortable in being and standing in your truth.
Yeah. And then you feel, and it's also empowering, like, it reminds me of years ago, I was in Singapore and I bungee jumped. It's the same like skydive, right? So you're up there and you just take that leap of faith. No, it's really leap of faith.
No, you on your own with that one. I don't know.
You're like, no, I'm good on skydiving. No, but that's what it is. It's that leap of faith. It's like, I'm up here. I don't know what the hell's going to happen, but you know what? I'm just going to believe. And so if we can work on our relationship with that feeling, like, even if we could bottle it and give people little taste tests, this is what it feels like, but this is how you overcome it. This is how you push through that. I think everybody gets better with that,
Right. So Ross, at this moment, I feel like you want to share a little bit of your book.
Yeah. And so I do want to say too, that this book, it does push the envelope with the conversation and the voice that I bring, just because I feel like there's just so much that I wanted to say for so long, watching the TV, not feeling seen and heard in my everyday life, not feeling seen and heard. So it comes strong politically and topic wise. And I guess I'm saying that to say, this first chapter, or this sample I want to read, is called Don't Be a Sissy. And I wanted to use this word sissy as an effect, but also to see, what does that really mean? Is emotional vulnerability, is that being a sissy? Like, what does that even do? So this is chapter 1, called Don't Be a Sissy. Okay. And this is when I'm in South Korea. And it says, they're going to give you a heart attack pill, my boss said. Nitroglycerin. I said, nitro what? I could barely speak as my head tossed side to side. One Korean doctor grabbed my jaw. Open. The doctor placed a nitroglycerin tablet under my tongue and quickly removed her hand from my mouth, which was beginning to tense like lockjaw. A stern nurse tried to get me to stop flailing long enough to plug me into a heart monitor. After several minutes, I finally ran out of energy to continue moving. My boss came over to my bed, her eyes watering with pity and sorrow, whispering to the Korean doctor, looking down at me. Ross, they didn't find anything wrong with you, she mumbled. Breathe. Ross, breathe. What's going on with you? She removed her glasses and wiped away a pooling tear in the corner of her eye. Are you okay? You always seem so together, she said. You should talk to someone. Somehow, I hadn't noticed the overwhelming anxiety in my life until this point. I waited for someone to check in with me about my brother's brain cancer, hell, my dad's cancer, and the disbandment of my mom and dad's marriage. I kept waiting, like a hitchhiker stuck in the vast Saharan desert, imagining a car approaching in the distance as the flesh on my shoulders bled and became scarred from the sun's blaze. 4 words would all 4 words, that's all it would take to provide a layer of relief. How do you feel? All of the physical sensations of anxiety felt normal to me. A skipping heartbeat, it felt normal. Shallow breathing felt normal. Sleepless nights felt normal until my body had enough. Was the answer so simple? Just to stop and breathe? That's it? My soul adventure had become a soul nightmare. My brother and his mysterious stage 4 brain cancer had my family in a terror loop as my dad frolicked around China chasing vaginas, perched in emotional oblivion. My beloved mom, rigid, inaccessible in a corner with her Bible and pearls, and me, a boy with a fresh flat top, a bugle boy sweater, and a perfect smile, now 7,000 miles away from home with my foundation being ripped open. And so there's a lot there because it speaks to that mental health piece. Right. I was in South Korea. They are also, and not to say that they're racist, but they have something going on with that. You know, they're not racist. And also too, like, I'm there, my brother's dying. My dad is, like I said, chasing vaginas. And here I am, just breathe. And isn't that weird that George Floyd, his last, I can't breathe? Come on, Monika. Is that all we need to breathe? Physically and, yeah, go ahead.
No, because I just feel like certain things and certain aspects of our lives suffocate us. And it still goes back to not living in our truth. So we're suffocated. We can't breathe. That, yeah, I can't. I can't. Yeah. I forget because it's growing, but someone was saying thank you for the transparency in your book, in your reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was deep. I hope, from you reading that people want to continue the reading and purchase the book. What's next though? What is next for you as an author? What is next for you as a musician?
For me as an author, now that I have this taste of how to bring a story and books to life, now that I know what it means to be vulnerable and just to be, relentless in my voice, I think I want to continue writing. I want to write subject matter that makes people uncomfortable or that makes people have to look in the mirror, at least to where they stand with stuff. Like, let's do it. This is the time to do it. But I also want to create music and joyous moments that make people dance, get them happy and things like that too. So the book also has a song that's available Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud by the same name, Panorama. And so maybe there's something like that, a short story with the song, put out a short story with the song, or maybe just a group of songs. But I definitely want to continue creating and just expressing my voice and, speaking to my experiences as they are, and just being authenticity. At least if you don't agree, like, oh, mental health, nah, be strong, nigga, you strong. Okay, at least if that's that, maybe there's some creative value that you can take, at least be entertaining with the material.
I agree. But with being uncomfortable starts conversation. So I feel like at least if they are uncomfortable, at least you are causing a lot of conversations, starting a lot of conversations, which is, key. And I'm sure that is your goal.
Yeah.
Since you've written the first book and the second book coming out, you have stated a lot of the feedback of people, I guess, saying, seeing your view. So what other, I guess, people have, has it changed their lives? Have they told you that they're more encouraged to be able to write? Have you inspired people? Are people now on a movement that now want to come out and be, to their family? Or are there situations where they're somewhat starting to be more comfortable being them?
Yeah, I mean, with the first book, a lot of people were coming forward with stories of abuse I know that seemed to be a topic that really resonated. Like, hey, I have some childhood trauma, or there's some elder abuse happening. I don't know what to do with it. And I put resources in that book on how to, access that kind of stuff. There's been people who've been inspired to tell their own story. Like, how do you get to a point to where you just don't give a fuck? Like, people hit me up like, how do you even get to that point? With this book, and I don't think this person has tapped in, but people have hit me up like, hey, you seem so normal. They're like, I read you whatever, bisexual, whatever, something about you seems normal, and I'm trying to fuck with that. You see what I'm saying? How do I, like, what am I supposed to do? And I said, dude, tell your story. You're not alone. I don't know what the normal part means. I don't know what they're resonating from what they see on me online, but you tell your story, whatever it is, and just be confident in it. So yeah, people hit me up with different stuff all the time, and I just try to encourage them for where they are. It takes a lot to sit and write a book. It really does. Maybe that's not the starting point for people. Maybe you don't have to sit and write a book, but I think at least just sit and tell your story to yourself. And I have an idea too, like trauma storytelling. Maybe if I did a class, like everybody in here, you want to tell your own story to overcome and heal and push through your trauma, and maybe it's geared towards men or people who just want to get over something and free that weight from themselves. But yeah, a lot of range of people hit me up, creatively and for their own storytelling. So I'm open to it. Any questions, hit me up. I have resources too.
Talking about question, a Discovery Awake, how has the experience of writing your story allow you to evolve?
Oh, just to take more risks and not take things personally. Yeah, because I've noticed too, when you interact with people, like, you don't know what kind of psychological baggage they're dealing with, where they're coming from, their trauma, all of that stuff. And so it really helps me not take things personally. Yeah, it really does. And then to just move more freely and confidently through my own life, like, hey, say what you got to say. This is you with it. You're not a billion people in the world. Yeah.
For real. I definitely feel like you should speak to high schoolers.
I think so.
I do. I really do. To be able to unpack your childhood, and to be able to really stick your neck out and write your first book, I really, really do feel that way. Like you were saying, there's a lot of abuse and things of that sort, and I feel like I feel like sometimes the younger kids might not be there yet, but I feel like that high school age, though they might be, a little like, oh, I don't want to hear it. Some people might, and I really feel like you should start doing speaking engagements. I really think that would be a good thing for you.
Yeah.
To be able to help others start the healing process. To be able to, because they're in their home, they might not be in a home where it is okay to start unpacking your baggage, and it's that focal point where you are before you're an adult. So you don't want to wait until you're an adult to unpack everything, you know what I mean? So I just feel like that middle ground, between 9th and 12th, I think so. I do. I really think so.
And just because you don't look at it, and I feel like a lot of people do this move with abuse and trauma and kind of question marks in their head, just because you don't look at it doesn't mean that it doesn't go away. You carry that for a lifetime, and it impacts your health, impacts your relationships. So at least look at it privately, confidently with somebody that you trust, and start there. And maybe you're right. I don't even know where my venue would be, but maybe it is with high schoolers, and how to just take ownership or get in front of that ownership, because the world don't give a fuck about anything that you're doing.
Right. Like, I feel like if there was someone that came to speak, you know what I mean, when I was younger, I feel like even if I didn't bite, at least that thought process would have started, where it's like, okay, maybe should I ask for help, or is there something wrong, or you know what I mean? It would start the thought process in your head to maybe question help, even if in that moment you don't say, okay, I need help, because we're so used to being embarrassed. It's not cool to need help. It's not cool to be around your friends, and so
Right.
at least you're starting the conversation.
Yeah, as a teenager, yeah, you're planting that seed, right?
Exactly.
But thanks for that. Maybe I'll look into that, how to best, use, access people. Yeah, because it's going to follow you your whole lifetime, and you'll be old and mad and not even have a clue why.
Yeah.
So
great.
Cool. We had some people come in. That was fun. Thank you.
Fun. And we got questions. It's like so fast. So I was just like, thank God that we were able to do that. But before we close, is there anything else that you want to share or tell us? I definitely want you to repeat again where we can purchase your book.
Yeah. So you can purchase everything on Amazon, on my website, rossvictory.com. I just launched a digital ebook store. So you can go in there, you can buy the ebook, you can buy my audiobook, you can buy the music. It's really cheap. If you share it on social media, you automatically get 25% off. So as you're adding it to your basket, you share and it gives you 25% off. And nothing else. Right now, I think tomorrow I'm gonna go out into nature, probably to Sequoia National Park with the giant trees, and just kind of, unpack, download, what do I want to do next after this book release. And now since it's launched, I just, do my interviews, push it as far as I can, and on to the next project.
Please share photos of you going out tomorrow, because that's amazing.
Yeah, and that really helps me stay focused too. I feel like nature and relationships with people are probably the most important thing. I know what's happening on TV and stuff, that's important, but it's all about relationships and nature. I mean, that's all we can really, not control, but that's all we got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being able to share this time and
Thank you.
Honor to be able to interview you. And to everyone that viewed in, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure his, for your questions, being able to view. For any fathers that are viewing, happy Father's Day.
Father's Day.
And, thank you.
Thank you, Monika J All. Could you save the video? Could you save it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, save it for me. And thank you everybody who tuned in. Have a nice day. See you.
Can you see the full panorama if you stare at the moon? The sun and the stars surround us, celestial views. Panorama, panorama, panorama. Do you see what I see in the full panorama? Panorama, panorama, panorama. Do you see what I see?